Shalom Aleichem,
Home, I dropped him off a sandwich and then I left.
friends. I am Alevsky here, Chabad Family Programs of the West Side, with a pre-Rosh Hashanah meditation titled The Shape, Sounds, the Calls and the Cries of the Shofar. We're about to enter a new year, and the one mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah is to hear the shofar blow. If you can do nothing else but that, that's all you need to do. So wherever you are this year, find a shofar blowing. They're everywhere. shofarinthepark.com, chabad.org/shofar something. No Jew should be without a shofar blast this year. And here on the west side, we have about 30 different shofar blowing times and places. But since we're going to be blowing the shofar, I wanted to share with you and with myself some beautiful thoughts, meaning and meditation about the shofar. Starting with the shape. The shape of the shofar traditionally needs to be curved. The curve of the shofar represents that we are bending our will to God. We're telling God, I'm not going to be stubborn as a stick. I will bend myself for you. You too, please. Bend yourself for me. Give me and my family and friends more than what we deserve. Then we have, in the shape itself, the mouthpiece is narrow, the exit sound piece is wide. That represents the pasuk, a verse we say in the Torah, from Tehillim actually, before we blow the shofar. We also say it in our monthly Hallel on Rosh Chodesh and in all other holidays. Min ha-meitzar karasika anani b'merchavka, which means from the narrowness, from the depths, from the narrowness, I call out to you, God, answer me in a broad fashion with abundance. So we see in the shofar shape itself, where it represents this idea that sometimes we're not in the best place, starting with a mouthpiece, tiny little mouthpiece. But as soon as the sound of the shofar reaches the exit, which is wider, it's already abundance. And so too should be in our lives. We call out in anguish, but we're blessed with salvation and abundance in any area we need. The Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, tells a story of a king who wanted his one and only son, the prince, to gain experience and learn various fields of wisdom and discipline through his experience, and sent him out to the world with a treasure chest full of gold and silver to sustain him as needed. Long story short, the prince got distracted with the world and he forgot who he was, and he began living the life of those around him wherever he went. And years later, he finally remembered that he was the prince, and he made his way back to the king. He finally remembered his mission. He made his way back to the palace, but he had already forgotten the language. And the guards at the palace gate didn't recognize him. Finally, he just called out, "Ah, Abba," one guttural cry. And his father, the king in the palace, hears the cry. And he says, "That's my son." And he goes out and embraces him. The Baal Shem Tov says that God sent our soul, our neshama, down into this world with a mission. And sometimes we get distracted and we forget our mission, or we don't complete it as expected. And then Rosh Hashanah is a time where we awaken. We're awakened. Something inside us says it's time to go back home. And we do. We come back home and we call out. We forget even how to pray. So we call out with a primal, guttural call to God, to our Father in heaven. And God listens and answers abundantly. Reb Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev tells another story, which I'll tweak. I'll just add with a rabbi's poetic license. So he tells the story of a king who once decided to go out in plain clothes to do some hunting. And he goes out into the thick of the forest and he gets lost. And for hours and hours, maybe even days, he's lost. And he meets various people on the way and he asks them, will you please send me back home? I'm the king. And they look at him. His plain clothes are already shabby and shattered and dirty. And they don't believe him. And they laugh him off. And then he goes on and on from person to person, from place to place. Finally, deep into the night, deep into the forest, he hears this music playing. He inches closer and he sees also a shabbily dressed individual sitting on a rock playing this beautiful melody with his flute. And he sits mesmerized. And he inches closer and he finally greets the person and says, please, sir, can you help me? This beautiful music is refreshing to the soul, but I'm the king and I need to get back home to my palace. The man, the musician who lives in the forest, recognizes the king. He says, absolutely, I'll take you back. He brings him back, shows him the way out of the forest. And the king, in his appreciation, re-robes him, tells him to take off his shabby dress, and gives him royal garments and appoints him in a position of high authority in the kingdom. Years pass, and this musician, who once lived in the forest, did something that was an act of rebellion that, according to the laws of the land, earned him the death penalty. As he was being taken out for execution, the king, as he always did, granted him one last wish. The man said, I want to reenact the situation that happened a few years ago. I want to dress in my old shabby clothing. I want you, the king, to dress in those same clothing that you were in when you were lost in the forest. I'll sit here outside on a rock and play the same tune that I did then. And so it was. And of course it melted the king's heart. And he forgave him. And the parable's lesson story is our story, in which we ourselves, we were that musician. The king's God. What happened was, at the time of Mount Sinai, the Midrash tells us, God was seeking a nation to whom to give the Torah. He reached out to all the other nations first, and they, with one excuse or another, they refused his gracious offer. And it came to us, Nasa v'nishma, we answered, we will do and we will hear. Yes, we're in for a relationship with you, God Almighty. And then at Mount Sinai at our wedding, God blew the shofar, the great blasts of the shofar. Today, soon tomorrow night, actually on Sunday this year, on Rosh Hashanah, we recreate that environment and we remind God of our music, the music that made our bond. So as you see, there's more, another deep story or situation. The sounds of the shofar. We have 3 sounds: tekiah, shivarim, teruah, and then tekiah gedola at the end. Tekiah is one long sound. Doo. Shivarim is 3 short blasts. Doo, doo, doo. Teruah are 9 staccato, at least 9 blasts in rapid succession. Many explanations given about them, and here's one. I think it's from the Maharal through Rabbi Yossi Jacobson on his site, theyeshiva.net. You can read it in detail. The long blast represents good, the good times. We're born with a powerful cry. Everything's good and perfect and beautiful and straight. 3 short blasts represent the sighs, the existential sighs that come about in our lives through the trials and tribulations that we all have. The 9 blasts represent an even deeper sobbing and crying for the troubles and the despair that a person might face in his life or her life, or some friends we know that are going through hardships. They're all at different levels of intensity of crying. These are all followed by a tekiah gedola. A tekiah gedola is one long blast, is longer than the first. It's even longer than the birthing blast. It's better, the outcome at the end of our suffering, if we allow it to be and we recognize that these are all challenges that are here to make us better and stronger, and we allow for that message to sink in. We reach that tekiah gedola, which is a longer blast. Things are better at the end than they were at the beginning, before the troubles began. So here's a sampling of my Rosh Hashanah sermon, and here's a sampling of different ideas of the shofar. There are many, many more. But as C. Freeman writes in a beautiful way, Chabad.org says, there are some things, in order to express ideas, we use words. Some things we're so passionate about that our words come out in a flow, an excited flow. They burst forth. And some things touch us to the core, and there are no words that can contain them. It's just a guttural cry, big, primal shout from the deepest place within, which reaches the deepest place above, and that's the shofar. We should all be blessed with a good year of health, joy, success, family, children, nachas, abundance in all of things, all of the above, and everything good, deep connection to Hashem and to the Torah. And it should all be with revealed good, Toiv Hanira V'Hanigla, revealed good, Menuchas HaNefesh V'Haguf, peace, in a peaceful way, in a peaceful manner, with peace of mind. God bless you. The year 5781. If you try.